From supersonic missiles to main battle tanks, Russia loves to boast about its military innovations. Time and again, we've seen the country's president, Vladimir Putin, and his various Kremlin cronies unveil fancy fighter jets and missile systems that are supposedly set to change the face of warfare like never before. We've also seen many of these so-called superweapons turn out to be complete duds, with many ending up as little more than expensive, embarrassing mistakes, gathering dust in storage facilities rather than delivering dominance on the battlefield. In fact, there have been so many massive military missteps from Russia over the years, it would take hours to list them all. With that in mind, let's focus today on just 5 of the most high-profile examples from recent years. Kicking off with a tank that Kremlin propagandists once called the best in the world, the T-14 Armata. Russia, and previously the Soviet Union, has always been known for its tanks. It's famed for having one of the biggest tank fleets on the planet, and has, to its credit, produced some very impressive models over the years. The T-34, for example, was one of the finest tanks of the age when it entered service in 1940, boasting one of the most powerful guns in the world. The T-72 too, despite certain design flaws, has seen extensive service in literally dozens of countries and numerous conflicts. The T-14 Armata was supposed to continue Russia's rich legacy of making some of the toughest, most formidable tanks on Earth. So far, it's failed on every front, and those failures began on day one. Several T-14s were publicly unveiled for the first time on Russia's 2015 Moscow Victory Day parade. During the rehearsals, one of them suddenly stopped moving. This was just the first of many signs that the Armata was never going to live up to the hype, but that hasn't stopped the Kremlin's propaganda machine propping it up as the next big thing in tank warfare. Indeed, for more than 15 years now, since work officially began on the Armata back in 2009, it's been one of the state's favourite topics of discussion. Stamps have been printed bearing the Armata's image, numerous officials have shown its design with praise, and the Russian army initially announced grand plans to acquire around 2,300 of these tanks by 2020. That didn't happen. Production and financial shortfalls delayed and disrupted the army's plans, and the Armata didn't even enter serial production until late 2021, according to state-owned defense conglomerate Rostec. In 2024, years later than originally announced, officials finally confirmed that the tank had entered service. On paper, there's plenty to admire about the Armata's design. While Russia has kept many of this tank's technical specifications under wraps, we do know that it has a reported weight of up to 55 tons, complete with a 1,500 horsepower engine, helping it reach peak speeds of 50 miles per hour or 75 kilometers per hour. It's also fitted with a 125mm 2A821M gun, capable of striking targets up to 5 miles or 8 kilometers away, and an unmanned turret. Russia also claims that the T-14 is a stealth tank, boasting minimal infrared, magnetic and radar signatures. It sounds impressive, but sounding impressive isn't the same as actually being impressive in real-world battlefield conditions. And while Russian officials have been busy hyping up the Armata, many military experts have noted numerous flaws in this tank's design. Its engine, for example, has been called out for being both outdated and underpowered compared to many modern counterparts. The much-lauded unmanned turret, too, appears almost ludicrously complex, equipped with a vast array of sensors, antennas, sights, cameras, and more, all of which could quite easily be taken out by light cannon fire or even heavy machine guns, effectively putting the turret out of action in an instant. The Armata also boasts an auto-loader, which is also always at risk of failure. If it does fail, the tank crew will have to resort to manually loading the Armata's gun, reducing its rate of fire to a pathetic 1 round per minute. Even the Afghanit active protection system installed on the Armata has come under fire. This system is supposed to be able to defend the tank from incoming munitions, but the tank's designers made the poor decision to fit the system's mortars beneath the tank's turret. Because of that, it's almost impossible to intercept any munitions striking the tank from above, which is exactly what most modern anti-tank missiles and kamikaze drones do. Eventually, even high-profile Russian figures acknowledged that the Armata wasn't quite as perfect as it had been made out to be. Dmitry Rogozin, former head of the State Aerospace Corporation, Roscosmos, admitted the Armata is unsuitable for war. He's not wrong. If the Armata truly was the game-changing behemoth it was supposed to be, then surely it would have seen extensive use in Ukraine. Instead, despite the Kremlin's claims that the Armata entered the war in 2023, there have been no recorded T-14 sightings at any stage of the conflict so far. What's more, in 2024, Rostec boss Sergei Chemysov openly admitted that this tank was simply too expensive to deploy in Ukraine, with Russian forces preferring instead to rely on alternatives, including the T-90 and decades-old Soviet tanks like T-62s. Expensive, flawed, and more style than substance, the Armata has brought nothing but embarrassment for the Russian military. The same can be said for the Sukhoi Su-75 Checkmate, which was once heralded as the next flagship fighter of Russia's aerial forces, but has so far failed to make a single successful flight. Russia unveiled this fifth-generation fighter jet back in 2021 at two high-profile air shows in Moscow and Dubai. On both occasions, the jet on display was little more than a mock-up, a non-flying model with absolutely zero real-world military value, but officials promised that the Checkmate would take to the skies as soon as 2023. Once again, that didn't happen. The Checkmate's maiden flight was pushed back to 2024, then 2025, and then 2026. To make matters even more embarrassing for Russia, it spent a reported $30 million on the initial marketing push for this fancy fighter, which is the most expensive campaign the country's military has ever staged. It involved hype-building teasers, futuristic promotional videos, and even a fragrance inspired by the aircraft, delivering original samples of fifth-generation fighter cockpit metal alloys, glass and leather, combined with bright notes of juniper, patchouli, and oak moss. So far, those Su-75 inspired perfume bottles have proven more potent than the jet itself, with test pilot Sergei Bogdan recently calling for divine intervention simply to get the Checkmate off the ground. With God's help, the Su-75's first flight should be soon. Like the T-14 Armata, it has some impressive tech specs on paper. If it ever actually comes to fruition, it's supposed to be a single-engine, multi-role fighter with internal weapons bays and a stealth-optimized design. Sukhoi, the manufacturer, states that it'll be able to fly twice as fast as the speed of sound, carry up to 7.4 tons of weapons, and travel for up to 1,800 miles or 3,000 kilometers on a single tank of fuel. It's supposed to rival the likes of the Chinese FC-31 and the American F-35, which is widely regarded as the best multi-role fighter in existence. Officials also claim that the Checkmate will be fitted with state-of-the-art electronic warfare systems, allegedly making it a dogfighting demon even in direct clashes with the finest 5th-gen fighters like the F-35 and F-22. There's just one issue with that. Russia currently lacks any avionics that are capable of even detecting F-35s and F-22s before they're able to launch air-to-air missiles to take out their opponents. On top of that, the range of American air-to-air missiles is greater than any Russian equivalent, and Russian long-range missiles only work when they're supported by early warning aircraft like the A-50. Russia only has around a dozen A-50s, and Ukraine has been damaging and destroying them over the course of the war so far. In short, the only thing powering the Su-75 so far is hot air. Moscow may claim that this jet is superior to the F-35, but the F-35 actually exists. It has a long track record of sorties and successful combat missions. The Su-75, meanwhile, is still nothing more than a concept, and with international sanctions making it increasingly difficult for the Kremlin's defense companies to get the resources they need, it's doubtful the Su-75 will be entering serial production anytime soon. One vehicle that the Kremlin has at least managed to produce in reasonable quantities is the BMPT Terminator, an armoured fighting vehicle that was developed in the late 1990s and early 2000s, before entering service in 2011. The concept for this vehicle dates all the way back to the Soviet war in Afghanistan, where Soviet forces found that their tanks were being torn apart by RPG teams. They needed a new armoured vehicle that could provide some sort of protection to their tank columns. Thus, they got to work on the Terminator. The result is a 53-ton beast with heavy layers of armour and enough firepower to take on light armoured vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, tanks and even enemy helicopters too, thanks to its two 30mm cannon, heavy machine gun and a Tupolev anti-tank missiles. Not bad, in theory. In reality, however, the Terminator has completely failed to live up to its imposing moniker. Despite entering service in 2011, it didn't see combat for the first time until May 2022, when Russia's 90th Tank and 76 Air Assault Divisions deployed the Terminator in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. Mere minutes after rolling over a ridge to rain down fire on a nearby highway, the BMPTs were forced to turn tail and flee as Ukrainian artillery threatened to blow them to smithereens. Because, yet again, in an increasingly familiar theme with so many of these Russian vehicles, the Terminator was found to have several serious design flaws. The biggest is its armour. It uses a T-72 chassis, which provides relatively strong defences against the likes of mines and shell fragments, but has one clear weakness: its turret. Drones, missiles and more can target the vehicle's turret and take out critical systems, and they don't even need to turn to heavy weapons to do so. Experts have found that even light weaponry is sufficient to take out Terminators thanks to their blatant turret weak points. Thanks to this, it came as no surprise that less than a year after its initial rollout, the Terminator suffered its first big loss, with one being destroyed by Ukraine in early 2023. Since then, open source intelligence analyst groups like Oryx have documented numerous cases of damage or destroyed Terminators. This despite the fact that Russia reportedly only built 33 of these vehicles to begin with and rarely dares to use them in Ukraine. While it's done more than the Armata and the Su-75 combined, the Terminator is another failure. It costs too much to make, it's needlessly complex, and it's nowhere near as tough as it seems, capable of being blown to bits by a single strategic drone strike. But Russia hasn't given up on it. In 2025, the country's army reportedly received a fresh batch of Terminators with additional protection, including the addition of reactive armor add-ons. New promotional videos were also issued, showing off the vehicle's new and improved strength. Unfortunately for Russia, those same videos reveal new design flaws as well. Most notably, eagle-eyed viewers soon spotted the extreme levels of vibration in the twin 30mm 2A42 cannons when they started firing, with tank development expert Andriy Tarasenko stating, "This machine scares the enemy with its shaking guns and pompous, meaningless promises. The BMPT hasn't been used in combat in over a year. Judging by everything, like the only T-72B3M equipped with the Arena Active Protection System, it seems too busy mainly filming movies." It's not only on land and in the air that Russia's so-called superweapons are proving entirely underwhelming. At sea too, the country has also encountered a multitude of failures. Failures like the Project 22160 patrol ship. The first of these vessels began construction in 2014. 5 more followed, for a total of 6, one of which is still being built. Of the 5 that launched between 2017 and 2024, one, the Sergei Kotov, has already been destroyed. Ukraine's forces sent it sinking down to the murky depths on March 5, 2024, with the aid of Magura V5 naval drones. A Ka-29 helicopter, which was on board the ship at the time, was also destroyed. That's not how Russia saw this project turning out. Project 22160 was meant to be a bold, exciting and innovative addition to the Russian naval fleet. It was supposed to fulfill all of the relevant duties of a modern patrol ship, like being able to hunt and detect enemy submarines, engage ships of a similar or smaller class, conduct strikes on land or maritime targets, support other units, and provide air defense when needed as well. But it can't do any of that. Despite its 1,700 tons of displacement and more than 300 foot, 94 meter length, it has almost zero offensive capacities, carrying a single 76mm gun and a few simple machine guns, plus some man-portable air defense systems, MANPADS. Originally, Russian engineers intended to enhance the vessel with modular add-on systems, like weapons blocks that could be swapped in and out to suit different missions and operational circumstances. This idea originated in America, When more than a decade ago, the US Navy explored the idea of making modular, literal combat ships, but soon found that idea was much better in theory than in practice, since the ships cost so much to make and took weeks to swap between modules. Rather than learning a lesson at America's expense, Russia stubbornly decided to stick with the idea, resulting in a batch of modular ships but no actual modules to fit them with. Even Russian experts have openly admitted that this project is an abject failure, with one stating, "Project 22160 is the most failed naval ship project in modern Russian history. Its shortcomings not only outweigh its advantages, there are no advantages at all. Minimal displacement led to inadequate seaworthiness. The modular weaponry was never developed or produced, leaving the ships in service with laughable armament, a 76mm gun and a couple of 14.5mm machine guns." Finally, we come to one of the longest running Russian military failures of all, the Tupolev PAK DA, also known as Product 80, Russia's attempted equivalent of the American B-2 stealth bomber, which has been around since the late 1980s. Work on the PAK-DA, which translates to Prospective Aviation Complex for long-range aviation, began back in the 1990s and was supposed to be a fifth-generation bomber at launch. Now, so much time has passed, Russia has since started referring to it as a sixth-generation bomber instead. Similar to the B-2, the PAK-DA features a fixed-wing design with a special radar-absorbing exterior and no vertical stabilizers. Its claim range is around 7,500 miles or 12,000 kilometers. Its reported payload is 30 tons, and it's supposed to be one of the stealthiest aircraft ever made, storing all munitions internally to minimize its external surface area and reaching supersonic speeds without having to rely on afterburners. Various reports regarding this aircraft have also, at times, spoken of state-of-the-art laser weaponry, network-centric warfare systems, and fully autonomous flight. Unfortunately, all of those tech specs and benefits remain purely hypothetical for the time being, as the PAK-DA is stuck in development hell. While Russia's biggest rival, the United States, has been flying stealth bombers for decades, the Kremlin's counterpart is going nowhere fast. Instead, the country's aerial forces are still having to make do with an increasingly outdated and depleted fleet of Soviet-era Tu-95s to carry out their bombing operations. Ukrainian forces famously took out large numbers of Tu-95s during the Operation Spiderweb strike, and Russian commanders desperately need a newer, more capable bomber to replace them, like the PAK-DA. But they're not going to get their wish. Even though multiple factories have been hard at work on this project for several years now, including the Kazan aviation plant, the Beriev Aircraft Company and the Novosibirsk aviation plant, none of them have demonstrated that they're anywhere close to completion. In the meantime, as a further stamp of humiliation for Russia to bear, America's already moved on to its next generation bomber, the B-21 Raider. Plus, given the fact that Russia faces increasingly strict and sweeping sanctions regarding products it's allowed to import, like electronics, machining equipment, and other defense industry materials, it's highly unlikely that the PAK-DA project will make any notable progress unless the war ends and sanctions are eventually eased. For the foreseeable future, like so many of Russia's other failed projects, the PAK-DA will remain in limbo, and the country's armed forces will continue to be stuck using weak, tired, and rusty assets in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces grow stronger by the day, thanks to their much more successful domestic innovations, like the aforementioned Magura maritime drones and Long Neptune missiles, as well as game-changing aid packages from allies around the world. Kyiv's army is always on the lookout for more of Russia's top-secret experimental weapons, and is actively seeking them out and destroying them. You can learn more about that in this video, which looks at how Ukrainian forces recently wiped out one of Putin's experimental aircraft, the A-60 airborne laser platform. And finally, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications today to continue enjoying even more insightful analysis, detailed breakdowns, and breaking military news reports from Russia, Ukraine, and beyond.